what is the minimum amount of time that a hole in your CV would need to be explained, like half a year, 1 year, etc. Bad news, if you show a gap even as long as a month, people might wonder. So somebody might ask you, I'd at least want to know, if you had a gap of a couple months, people are going to assume that you got fired or let go from job one before you went to job two, because otherwise maybe you're living paycheck to paycheck and you should have been, if you had a job the whole time, you started one and went to the other. Now that's not true, and not everyone will assume that, but I would be ready to explain every job transition I made in a positive light if I could. By the way, I share openly, early in my career or middle of my career, more, it wasn't early. I was laid off twice during the dot-com bubble era. I went through two different companies that laid me off. So when I interviewed at Amazon, and if I interview again, and I have interviewed outside of Amazon a few times, I have to be ready to explain that. So going back to the question, I think realistically though, you're not going to be asked until it's 3 or 4 months or more. No one's going to think much of it, because taking a month or two between jobs is not unusual. So I would say the minimum amount of time is probably 2 or 3 months. Beyond 6 months, I'd definitely be ready to say what was going on. And in fact, many people fill that in on their resume in some way. Um, they fill it in by, if they were saying consulting, they fill it in by saying taking a break and traveling the world. You're going to have to be able to explain that a little bit, but they fill it in and they just call it out and say, I took 6 months off to work on my new startup idea, but it didn't get traction, or whatever they did. Uh, what I wouldn't want to say is, a year and a half fruitlessly looking for a job with no hope. But you do need some way to explain that period, because the longer it gets, by the way, people are going to have a lot less questions, a lot fewer questions about past gaps in your resume than if you just left a job and now it's 6, 8, 12 months without a new job. They're going to wonder why you can't get hired. And you need to be explaining what education you were getting, or that you're changing careers. You need a positive explanation. You can be honest and say, I'm looking for the right job and I haven't found it yet. But you can't sound like a downer. Like, well, I just can't find a job. What that tells me, whether it should or not, is all these other companies you're presumably interviewing with have figured out some way, some reason that you're not qualified, that I should. Now it's a game of like me find why you're no good. You do not want to prompt that. So this question only asks how long. Short gaps won't matter. Gaps in the past won't matter, but long gaps